Good day. God, it's so funny that how that hits me every single time, and it's so funny that in as much as that, it's because it's a part of me that wouldn't have done this before. I would never ever have done this, and when I start doing it, it's like, well, she's doing it. What I'm going to do today is to start to go through the different parts of the mind and how they work, how they play out in the mind, so that you can start to recognise them when you feel them in you. Because when you recognise them, then that separation can step in and go, oh, what's that? You can start to see these parts as separate from you that are happening within you, within your human experience, within the game, but they're not actually you. And so I kind of felt that if I explained to you what they were like, it would be easier to recognise them. So these are that's not the right one. I've written down some things so that's it. What I've done is I've thought about it and thought about these are it's like two bands of three. It's like two little gangs that kind of go around each other. They always are around each other because they're reliant on each other for their existence because they come from the separate sides. And both need to be there to make the balance, because if there's only one side and not the other, that's my dog coming in, there wouldn't be harmony. But of course there isn't harmony because everything in there is all churned up and doesn't know what the hell's really going on. It's running off its old information. So what I'll do is go through them and explain what each one is like and what it does in me. Because what they do in me won't be the same. It's like we all come in and we've all got the same box of tools, but how they're used and how they're put together and how they work together is our own alchemy. Even though they do work together, and they will, how it happens is our own individual little bit of consciousness, our own avatar's experience in the game. So the first three are the blamer, self-righteousness, and the bully. Now, they're kind of like a band that go around together. And they're kind of in opposition with poor me, the warrior, and self-loathing. The six of them are always they come as sort of a pack. And they react from each other. Now, the blamer is a very interesting one because mine used to be really big. It had to blame somebody for everything all the time. It had to be somebody's fault because once you look at it and go right into it, it's a fear mechanism. The blamer comes out or develops when we're children in relation to the warrior, which is the other side. Now, the warrior is the one that kind of ingests what its primary caregivers and the people it loves and wants love from. It ingests the things that they don't like about you, the things that you mustn't do, and if you do, the consequences of. So the warrior is constantly monitoring. It's like it carries the authority figure, like in my case, mother, on its back, and mother's whispering or shouting in its ear what is right and wrong all the time. And so the blamer is the counteractor of the warrior in the game, because when the warrior or the experience, the humanness, the part of you that's not controlled, which gets smaller and smaller as time goes on, but when you're little, when you're doing stuff, so say you're doing something that when you were a kid that you knew that mum wouldn't like. You're doing something that you knew was kind of, you want to do it, but mum's not going to like it. And so as you're doing it, the warrior is there. And the blamer is in the background thinking of how a story of who it can blame and what it can blame for the circumstance of what's happening. So, but it takes hold and then it follows you everywhere, through everything. So everything you're doing, the blamer is looking to where the blame can be placed so it's not has to be taken here. Because the blamer is about self-preservation. And And so it's always looking for where to place the blame. And so, for example, you're a kid, you knock something off and you break it. Now the warrior is going to go, oh my God, mum's going to go mental. What am I going to do? So the blamer comes out, right, and it makes up a story. I came in the room and it was on the floor, and it will run through all the stories until it finds the one that it thinks might work. It was already broken. Somebody else must have done it. It must have been them. I caught it on the bottom of my dress. I wasn't touching it. And the warrior will break. So the blamer will come up with an excuse, and then the warrior go, no, that's not going to work because what if this happens? What if she says that? And it will play out the scenarios, and does it all the time, whatever it's doing. And the blamer also works alone as much as I was washing up one day. This is when I'd actually seen a little video of some woman talking about the blamer on Facebook, and when I'd seen it, I'd gone, oh my God, I've got that. And it was more of a case of, I had that, because my things had kind of gone back by then. But then I noticed I was washing up. No, I was drying up. Somebody else had washed up. A guy had washed up. And I was drying up. I picked up a plate. And when I picked up a plate, a mug fell on the floor underneath and smashed, which was kind of like a mirror of what this woman had said. And I noticed immediately the blamer said, I wish when he washed up that he would stack things properly. Now look what's happened. He's broken my mug. And I saw that and I thought, oh my God, that we do that all the time. We do that I wish that person hadn't done that to inconvenience me. It's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. Because it's trying to exonerate itself from blame, because that's what it had to do. It couldn't be seen to be wrong because the punishment would always be too grand. And so it had to develop a strategy to get out of trouble all the time. And so the two of them, they kind of go hand in hand. Now, when the blamer comes out, it feels kind of, it hangs around with self-righteousness. Self-righteousness is the part that looks down on, and you're stupid, that's stupid, you're an idiot, because the blamer has to blame. So it has to distance itself to be able to accept the fact that it's pushing blame onto somewhere else. So it has to make the thing it's blaming worse than it. And so self-righteousness lifts it up so that it can tolerate the fact that it's doing something horrible. And the bully and self-righteousness very much go hand in hand. Now, the bully is sneaky, mean, cruel, cold. That's the part that will come in when it's blaming and want to dominate. It's got a very nasty way about it. Well, mine has anyway. I noticed it today actually, which is, it's funny because I've been thinking about doing this for a few days, talking about this, and I've been making a list of the parts of the mind and then wondering how to talk about them. And today is the day of the election in the UK, and I'm obviously staunch Labour because I believe in humanity, and I saw a Facebook friend. It's not somebody I know; it's somebody I know. It's a friend of a friend. That they were voting Conservative, and I was just like, I've seen it over the last few days, his posts, and this isn't somebody with money. This is somebody who literally has just ingested the propaganda that has been played out to him, and it's kind of like on Facebook smiling, saying, "I'm going to shit in my own mouth tomorrow," and this part of me just rose up in like, you. The first thing it said was, "You fucking idiot." I didn't put that. We did write that actually, but then I deleted that and tried to because I don't normally comment on things, but I just felt like, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You do that, you're digging your own grave and laughing as you're doing it. This is somebody who's got someone they dearly love in hospital at the moment, who's very ill and is posting constantly about it, and then they're saying, I'm going to vote for the party that's going to take away that ability to look after my people. It's just craziness. And this part of me riled up. And I noticed that I started to write a reply saying, do you realise that this is what will happen? And I saw how this bully part of me wanted to write its action, its desire, is to be better than, to degrade, to show someone what an idiot they are, show them their stupidity. And it's like in me. It's a replica of my mum's nastiest side, and so when that I felt that rise up, the other part of me is like, oh, don't comment on. Oh, felt frightened of that. Felt frightened of because it's out of balance. Because the balance is to the way to do that is to reply in a way that puts your points across, but in a kind and loving way. But the part that was riled up by I can't, in my physiology, I can't stand inequality. I can't stand cruelty and and things that are out of balance. And I can see how out of balance the world is right now in the game. When I step out, it doesn't matter. The game is just the game. It's like if you were playing any computer game and you're going, well, over there this is happening, over there's that happening, well, this has happened to them. It's like that. But when you're in the game, you invest in the game. This is the world that we live in, and at the moment it's completely corrupt and out of balance, and that has to change. And so that part of me that wants to come out and be an activist has always been suppressed by the warrior and the, oh my god, don't make a fuss, don't stand out, because it sees that when the bully that is awakened, that the way that it reacts isn't pleasant. It's very snake-like. It's very degrading and mean in a patronising, so self-righteous, so I'm right and you're wrong. But in this incident, that is truth. But that side of the mind's truth is not delivered in any kind of kindness. It's delivered from a place of unkindness. And so the balance has to be made so that you can fight for what is right, but in a way that's constructive. And that was a really great lesson for me today, seeing that. You know, you realise how perfect everything is. You know, like it came to me a few days ago, I need to talk about this. I'm not quite sure how. And then this morning, I received the perfect way of seeing my mind, because there it was in front of me playing out. This part going, I've got to protect my people. I've got to protect this country against you fools. And this other part going, be kind about it. You know, shouting and calling someone an idiot isn't ever constructive. It just causes upheaval. But that side of the mind, that's its way. It's comes out all guns blazing, and it's programmed by what it ingested when you were a child. When you ingest what you saw in your life being given to you. So, and also of course, like I can see when that part of me comes out, I can see my mother as clear as day, the way she was when that part of her was out. And when I see that in me, this part that was terrified of that is in absolute rejection of that. It hates it. It's like, oh my God, that's horrible. You're horrible. That's awful. And then self-loathing could kick in. Oh my God, I'm a terrible person. I thought that and I said that and I did that. But when the balance can come in, because what actually happened in the end with my comment, I did call him a fool actually, which was a little bit harsh. I explained the situation as best I could from the fact that I could feel this anger in me. I was actually shaking when I was writing it. I felt this, but it's brilliant because I see how the two parts are playing out. The one that wants to not be hurt. Now, before I wouldn't have said anything because that part of me was too self-loathing, would be too embarrassed to stand up. It would have, or if this part came through and did, it would regret it terribly afterwards. But it's actually necessary because it keeps it in check. Because if self-loathing didn't come out and go, oh my God, that was a horrible thing to say or do, whatever, this part would just run riot. So there has to be the counterbalancing. But what I have to do in this sort of situation is kind of just watch my humaning happening and see how it plays out with each other, because both parts are on the same side with this. Both parts of my mind, well, actually, the negative side doesn't give a fuck about anything really. The real deep down doesn't care about anybody. Like at the lowest level. But out of it, I have huge compassion, and when that compassion comes out, it can come out in like, for example, a few weeks ago I saw a photograph on Facebook that was just so absolutely hideous of animal cruelty that it sent me into sort of a shock. I reeled away from it. I couldn't believe my eyes. I won't tell you what it is because I don't want to put it in your head. But then at the same time, you kind of think, because part of me was like, oh my God, fancy putting that on there. I don't want to see that. That's disgusting. There was a whole barrage of all my mind parts. The part that was going, oh God, fancy posting that. That was, ah. Oh. And then there's another one, how could you do that? How could you do that? It was like absolute panic. And then there's the angry part that wanted to go up to the person doing it with a baseball bat and smack them around the head with it and say, get off him. All of that, all of those things. But that's the three kind of the different parts of the mind. When something shocking happens, they jump out. So that, because I mean, the picture that I saw, if I had been there, there's no way that I could have just reeled away from that. I would have to have done something. But violence wouldn't have been the answer. It's very complex. It's a very complex world, and we're very complex. There's so much going on in us, and we don't, like when you see a picture like that and you suddenly feel this absolute burst of compassion, and how can I make that stop, and what can I do about that? If we didn't have that, we would just kill each other, wouldn't we? All the, yeah, it's a very, very complex game. I'm not sure that I've explained this at all well. I haven't talked about what I was going to talk about in the way that my organising mind decided it would play out. That's another thing, isn't it? You never know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to be said. It just happens. It just comes out. You can plan something and then something else completely happens. So what's the point of really planning anything? But then if you don't make any plans at all, nothing would happen. It's all a paradox. It's all a... And it's just seeing through the mind as it erupts and it speaks and learning from it. Sometimes another part of the mind will step in and stop something happening, and other times it doesn't. But from the point of view of back, it doesn't matter in the bigger picture because it's all you. The horrible picture I saw, I was in reality, I was the recipient and the doer. You're the murdered and the murderer, always. And it's the same as if you were playing a game and your character had to kill this person or that person. It's got that much connection. It's not the same. When we're immersed in it, it's so submersive. But that's the game, because we have all of these things in us that are part of the game. And it's working through them so that you can live comfortably and happily. And the balance needs to be there, because we all need to be soft. We need to be soft activists, really, I think. We need to be able to stand up and say, wrong, no, I will not tolerate that that does not work well with me, that's bad to humanity, it's bad it feels bad in me, and so I say no to it. But at the same time, that has to be done in a way that doesn't then mean that you turn violent. But you can see that, like that part in my mind, that the bully part, and the self-righteousness and the blame of, oh my God, you idiot, you can ruin our bloody country with your ignorance because you've been buying the propaganda. You buy into their story and then you'll make everybody suffer. That can be there, and I will let that speak and I will listen to it because it has its point. It's valid. But I will also listen to the part that says, they can't help it. It's shouting isn't going to help. Being mean isn't going to help. Just be informative. And so that this part then has to go, all right, you do this, you take this. But it's still in the background going, oh, fucking say that. Yeah, fucking... And this part, balance coming together. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what I've just said, really. So I'll listen. I always do what I always do, listen back to it. And if I think there's anything useful there, I'll post it. I think I've got a bit lost along the way, but who knows? It might be absolute rubbish. We will see. Speak to you soon. Adios, amigos. To you, I won't have gone anywhere, but it's the next day for me. So, what I realised was that I hadn't actually described these things very well at all. And so what I thought I'd do is to just go through them individually and explain how they work together. I've got to bring them up there. Oh, I've got the wrong one again. Rubbish. Rubbish stuff. I've completely lost it. Oh, it's there. It's already there. Right, okay. I'm going to explain to you how they kind of work and interact with each other. Like the blamer and poor me, they work beautifully together. They absolutely relish each other's company, really, because they both feel kind of like victims, I suppose. Or poor me feels like the victim, and then the blamer has to find someone to blame so as not to hold it here. You know, my poor me used to be quite sizable, and felt sorry for itself a lot of the time. I mean, I felt because I related to it, so I did feel sorry for myself. I felt like a victim of life, that I'd been dealt a really shitty hand, and that I was just trying to just get through it. You know, that kind of feeling of, I soldier on, but you have no idea how I have suffered. It's that kind of thing. And if you need to really embrace your suffering, then there has to be something to blame for it, doesn't it? Because if you're going to be poor me, you have to have something to blame it on. Circumstances, people, just life in general, everything. I mean, you get people, poor me's and blamers, who will feel really, really sorry for themselves over the weather. You know, arguing with the weather. We were going to have such a nice day today, and then the weather turned on us, and poor me, and the blamer, bloody weather. You know, it does it all the time. I forgot what I was saying then, so I get sidetracked very easily. My poor me. Also, something else I realised was that my poor me and illness went very, very much hand in hand. I had a lot of illness in my life, and what I realised through this process is that I actually quite liked being ill. And I don't know, I've painted myself in a fabulous light, don't I? And thing is, once all these things are gone, you can talk about them completely openly because you know it's not you. And so you don't have to be ashamed of anything anymore. I'm not ashamed about anything now because it's not me. It's just what this one did, what this one believed and thought. It's not who I am. It's just what I picked up and how I used it. And now it's just fascinating to me. Because the thing is, when you really look into why things are like they are, it just becomes fascinating. And all blame and things disappear. You know, the blamer basically gets disarmed because it wants to blame, but when you're there going, well, actually, if you look at it like this, and you see that, as I explained earlier, the blamer is there because it feels that it's got to justify itself all the time. But going back to illness, I realised it was when it hit me when I had an operation a couple of years ago. I had to have my gallbladder removed, which that actually was one of the things that spurred me on to get myself physically sorted out mentally, which meant that the weight just dropped off because there was I realised I'd broken my gallbladder by constantly abusing my body throughout the 48 years. Dieting, not dieting, eating loads of fat, not eating any fat, just, treating the body wrong. And eventually it broke. And the funny thing, well, it's not funny actually, but the thing is, I'd actually had a problem with my gallbladder since I was about 18. It hurt me all my life. It would come and go, and it was excruciating pain, but I never really knew what it was. I went to the doctor about it when I was about 20, and at the time I was massively fat. And I remember going in, and this doctor was a little tiny man, and I told him that I had this awful pain in my stomach, and he just looked at me and told me to stand on the scales, which I did. And then he looked at the scale, sat back down and looked at me and said, do you honestly think that you need to weigh twice as much as I do? And I was so embarrassed and ashamed that actually he told me to just go and lose weight, which is, he said I probably had a hiatus hernia or something. But yeah, the deep shame. So I never actually went and had any treatment for it again. I just put up with it for all these years because the shame of that, whenever I felt that pain, the shame of that encounter meant that I didn't want to mention it. And anyway, I ended up having an operation for it. And I realised that when I came home, I was actually, because I wasn't actually in any pain, but I actually really loved the fact that I wasn't very well, because it meant that I had no responsibility, nobody wanted anything for me, and that I could just lie around without any thoughts of I should be doing or other people are going to think I should be doing. And then I started to look at that and look at illness and realise that when I was a child, I suffered a lot from tonsillitis, and it would be really bad. I would be really poorly for a week, 10 days sometimes. But along with being really poorly and in a lot of pain and stop it, my dog, he's complaining at my son's dog who's come to stay. When I got tonsillitis, it meant that everybody rallied around me because I would be proper poorly. And so it would mean that my mum would be so lovely to me because she was worried about me. And so, then you do that thing of opening your eyes through your illness, and there's mummy looking down at you with absolute love and worry and, bringing me Lucozade and magazines and, sponging me down, treating me beautifully. And so I associated illness with care. And so I realised that a lot of the time through my life hang on, as if you're going anywhere. Well, you might be. You might have buggered off with all that growling. Stop it. Go on, you two. Buggers. I associated illness with care. And so once I saw this and I really looked at it, I haven't been ill since then. I mean, I don't associate illness. I don't, one night I had a sensation in my stomach, and I was sat there just being with this sensation, and it was about half an hour when I realised that it was pain, because I don't call anything. And so it's like I get my nerve pain sometimes, but without a story about pain, it's not pain. It's a sensation that happens that maybe you don't like as much as other sensations. But when you actually go into pain and break it down, it's sharpness, it's hardness, it's shooting, it's electrical, it's whatever it is. But it's the story that you add to the pain that makes it a problem. Because like with me, if I get a pain in my face, if I then go, oh my God, it's back. Oh my God, I'm going to have that operation again. I'm going to have months and months of pain. I'm not taking that medicine, and the doctor will try and make me have it. And then you'd have an argument in your head about how he would say I had to take it and I would say I wasn't taking it. And, the mind will then grab that and make it into a massive thing. But if it's just there, you register it's there, it's gone, end of story. And it's the same, nothing is as bad as the mind makes it out to be. It's the mind is responsible for all of our problems, because in reality we don't really have any. Well, we don't. When we're out of it, we don't have any problems. Anyway, back to what I was meant to be talking about before I got sidetracked again. Oh, that's not it. Don't even know what that is. I've lost it now. It must have gone. I'm not very good at computing. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. So poor me and the blamer. So notice your poor meing and notice your blaming and notice how they go hand in hand. But don't be ashamed of it. When you notice it, just go, oh, there it is, because everybody has it. And don't be ashamed of anything you have. Just be willing to explore it and go, oh, look at that. Oh yeah, there's that. Okay? You don't have to make it into a negative. It's the mind that makes it in a negative, because the positive mind sees these traits in you and it goes, oh God, I don't want that. I don't want to have that. I don't want to be that. It doesn't have to be. You can reassure, you're not that. That's okay. It's that. You're you. That's it. Itself. So you can just watch it and you don't have to get involved. It's funny actually, because it's kind of like you become the teacher of a class of unruly children, and gradually over time you tame that class and you bring them round into being, so everybody appreciates the teacher, they all appreciate each other, but you have to be on the ball, so you have to notice when it happens, and you go in with your kind, loving reassurance. And the fact that you're coming from that place, you're bringing that energy, and so it lightens it anyway. Or it causes it to completely erupt because it can't deal with that energy. And that's okay too. Because everything that erupts and burns and frizzles in the air, it can't come back. It's out. So, but the only way out is through. And so even when you're going through something really, really horrible, you can keep that in your mind. I'm letting this out. I'm releasing this. It's got to come through the gate to get out. And, better out than in, so they say. Right, okay. What next? The warrior. Now, the warrior is a very interesting one for me, because the warrior and the bully would be quite in association with each other, because the bully can't stand the warrior. The warrior really gets on the bully's tits. It's just like, oh, you fucking bellend, just shut up. It just can't bear the warrior's whittling and about everything. And so the bully will bully the warrior. It will try and encourage it to go away, and when it won't stop doing what it's doing, then it will start picking on it in that kind of way. Well, if I can't make you go away, I may as well have fun with you. The warrior, mine used to be in the background, and whatever I thought, its reaction. No, thank you. I'm making a video. Whatever was going on, the warrior. So this is a good example of the warrior. I might have talked about this before, but it's the one that comes to mind. Is I've always enjoyed walking and being outside and doing things, in nature. But what happened was I'd stopped walking the dog, and the guy would always do it, and I would only do it if he was away. But I really enjoyed it. And so when he'd go away, me and Nige, we'd have a brilliant time. We'd go off all over the place walking. But then when he came back, he would start doing it again. And then this time when this released itself, he was here, and I thought, it was a Sunday, and I thought, I'm going to go for a nice walk, because the week before I'd been to this particular walk, and I thought, I'll go there. And the warrior's like, what if you get attacked by a dog? Yeah, well, we won't get attacked by a dog. Well, you might, because there was that house, and we had to walk past it, and it had 2 dogs, and they might come out, and they might attack you. And I went, well, no, they won't attack. They might attack Nigel. What if they attack Nigel? What if they attack Nigel, and then the owner comes out and sees Nigel attack them back, and then he gets a gun and shoots Nigel? And watching this from inside, or watching this play out, and seeing that the warrior will, whatever you give it as a, well, no, that's not going to happen, it will continually up the ante and up the ante. And it has no logic. It's just, and then it's got another thing, but that. And it did it in me all the time. Every time I was going to leave the house, it assumed I was going to die. Oh my God, don't go out there. And so when this is happening all the time, then the bully, it feeds it because it finds it amusing. And so the warrior go, oh my God, what if that happened? And then the bully might come in and go, yeah, well, this could happen. And then the warrior's like, oh my God. And then they play it out between them. And then other parts might come in too. Like, poor me, oh God, this is going to happen to me. And then you might get things from the other side, and don't be so stupid. Logic and reason, that's ridiculous. Like my mother's voice could have come in and, don't be so stupid. Will all play out at any time, and it will all mingle in together. It's like each part of the mind has a different relationship with other parts of the mind. And you may end up, sometimes your bands may be the same, the 2 lots that are out, or another one might come in, or that one might not be there. A lot of the time it's depending on what was triggered, the memory or the thing that you're thinking about, it will depend on what was triggered when you first had that memory. And so the ones that were there when that memory was around are the ones that will come out when you think about it. If you think, the memory is associated, all of those parts and put them together, that's what the memory is, the collection of what the mind has brought in together. And so it can, you never know. You never can tell what it's going to be, what it's going to say. But what you can know is that if you step back out of it, none of it is real. It's all because it's not real because you're watching it and you can't believe your eyes. You're thinking, oh my God, I don't remember that. Or no wonder that's like that. That's the thing that happens a lot is you'll see something in yourself and happen and you go, oh my God, that is why. And then you can maybe list 10 things or 10 ways that you behave or 10 things you were believing that will then drop away too because the light shined on. And the thing is, once you see something, it's like with me with the blamer and the poor me's, once I saw through them and really looked at them and saw how they played out and talked to them, why do you feel like that? Like the warrior, that was really interesting actually because she went to live in the village. The village stopped in the end. It was like the part of the mind that was made the village disappeared and so the village went with her. She sunk in and so I can still access it but it's not something I used anymore, but this is when I did. I spent about, I don't know, most of the evening, 3 or 4 hours, sitting in meditation or in this space with the warrior. I'd taken her to the village, talking her through why she didn't need to worry. And everything she came up with, that's not going to happen. And it took hours and hours of just her, but what about that? Because in the place that I've made up, the village where they can live, nothing bad happens. Nothing awful is going to happen. No one falls out with anyone. No one can hurt themselves. No one's ever hungry. No one's ever shouted at. Nothing bad happens. So it's just a place of love and it's union. And so I sat in my head in this house with her because it was like the little house she had like a what do you call it when you've got like a platform where the bed is. I can't think of the word. But anyway, I was saying that's your bed up there. What if I fall down the steps? You won't fall down the steps. If you fell down the steps, nothing would happen to you. You won't feel pain. You won't feel. What if this happened? What if that happens? I was saying you can make bread. What if I go out and I leave the oven on and I don't turn it off? You won't do that. And even if you did, it would turn itself off because nothing bad happens here. And saying there's lots of people. What if they don't like me? What if they're mean to me? What if they do this? What if that happens? What if, there's animals? What if they bite me? And just going with it all the time. The animals here don't bite. It's just patience and patience until eventually the warrior saw through it. And she started saying, so I could jump off here and I wouldn't hurt myself. And I could put my hand in the oven and it wouldn't burn me. And then she got it. And she thought, whoa. And all that tension that she's been for years, just poof, gone. And I left, and then the next day I went back into that. I remembered thinking about that. I wonder how she's getting on because I can access any of it at any point. And she was in her house with several of the other entities of me. She was laughing, she was having the whale of a time. She was jumping off the step, she was cooking bread, she was saying, it doesn't matter, I've got jam on over there and it can, nothing can burn down. She was just doing things that normally she would have been too scared of doing. And so that's how it's just slowly, lovingly talking to something that doesn't understand until it understands. You just bring love and love and love until it absorbs it and eventually it will poof away. And it won't be there. Now, probably for about a month after that, because your brain takes a while for the synapses and everything to change, she might pop in and remember, she would start and I would immediately say to her, what are you doing? And she'd go, oh God, yeah. And she'd be off. And so, she would remember she didn't have to do it. So, yeah, that's that. Now my screen's gone dark and I don't know if I push that, am I going to stop this video? I don't know if I have now. Oh, have I not been recording this at all? Oh yeah, I have. Oh dear. Never mind, I do try. I'm just, not very good with, especially I'm getting worse all the time. It's kind of like my mind is receding more and just leaving me to get on with stuff. It's not interested in my life or this life or whatever this is. But it's all right. I get by. Um, I don't know if I'll just look at my list if I can find it. Damn it! Oh, there it is. Okay, pour me that self-loathing. Oh, self-loathing. Now, self-loathing travels between the two places. It can be active in either side because it's that part. It's one of the, well, if not the hardest part, because it holds all of the things that you've. It's like it's shame, it's um, guilt. It's it doesn't want to be here. Basically, it feels so disgusted with itself, so ashamed of being, even breathing, being anything, that it just wants to disappear. It can't bear itself. It makes itself cringe. It feels, it just wants to, it doesn't want to be, it wants to be annihilated. And it says it wants to die, I want to die. But what it wants to do is not be what it is. It's not that it wants death, it just wants this horribleness to stop. I found actually, this is another interesting thing, suicidal thoughts, which are very much associated with self-loathing, again come on both sides of the equation, because self-loathing can go between the two. The dark side of the mind, because it comes from nothing and it finds this whole thing ridiculous, really, it just wants to go back into nothing. And because it finds the frivolousness of this side so absolutely annoying, it just wants it to stop. It just wants to be able to sink back into not being. Because actually, in its natural state, that's how it should be. It should be just resting unless war happens or something terrible happens, and then it comes out. But because there's the energy's inside, it's there all the time, and it gets sick of it, and it just wants to end. And so that's the part that will try and encourage this part to kill itself. When this part's, I don't want to be in, like, yeah, well, do it, because it's like, oh God, anything, make it stop. But this side used to have suicidal thoughts, but they were actually a comfort, because they were more of a fantasy, in as much as this one, who really found this all very harsh and was bombarded by the negative side all the time, would just think, I can't bear it, I can't do this anymore, I can't be picked on like this, and so it would think about suicide in a way of escape, to make it stop. And it wasn't that it was actually suicidal, again, like the other side, it just wanted it to stop. And it actually found it comforting to think about that, to think about making it stop. And actually, you realise that in a way it was like a form of meditation, because by thinking, if I am dead, it will stop, it was sort of like going out of the mind, because it was, you were actually pulling yourself away from your humanness. And so, with inadvertently, it was the thing that gave me comfort. Even though if you said to someone, I'm having suicidal thoughts, they would be, oh my God, everybody has them at some point. Or there isn't anyone that never has at some point thought, oh my God, I want to kill myself. Especially teenagers. Actually, that's really interesting, isn't it? That most teenagers go through that phase of, I just want to die. Oh, God, it's awful. Why did you have me? And all that sort of thing. And I think it's because this world is becoming more and more solid, and that part of them that really doesn't want to be in it starts to bulk at that. But yeah, self-loathing it's the thing that needs you the most. It needs your love so much, and it won't be able to accept it to start with, because it hates itself. Like when you're in that place, when you sink right down into that real place of loathing of self, you don't like anything, and you don't want anything, and you can't accept anything because you don't feel worthy of anything. When I was in self-loathing, I couldn't look at a flower, I couldn't look at the moon. I discovered this by being awake within it and looking around from within it. Think, okay, I'm in self-loathing. What happens if I look at that? And realising that my eyes just would not, it was like burning to it. To see anything beautiful, anything nice, it felt like it burnt it, because it didn't deserve to see it. So to look at the beautiful moon, it felt unworthy of the moon, because I'm not worthy of seeing that. I'm not worthy of anything, seeing anything nice. And you notice when self-loathing is around, when people are in that space, they look at the ground when they walk along. They fill their head with nasty things. Like when I was in self-loathing, I would watch programs about awful things, like serial killers and stuff like that. I still watch things like that sometimes. From an analytical point of view, I find anything like that fascinating. I find any kind of humanity completely fascinating, from any strain, right down from the terriblest, awfulest person, right up to the most saintly, and everything in between. Fascinating, because that's all the game. It's all the game. Every aspect is the game. But yeah, it tends to, self-loathing will go towards negative things, or it will try really, really hard to pull itself out, and will do things like try to make itself feel better by, what's she got? Molly, give me that. Sorry. She's got an empty incense box. She'll eat anything, that dog. Yeah, we'll be eating, drinking, gratification, anything to make me feel better, anything to try and lift me out. That's when we go into unconscious destructive behaviour, because self-loathing doesn't care. It wants to die, and if it can't die, then at least give me something to make me feel even slightly better. It has no connection to beauty in life, because it feels like hell. Next time it comes up on you, it brings anxiety and self-loathing, and they all go very much hand in hand. But next time you feel that in you, instead of trying to run away from it and push it away and get it away, just go to it. Go to it with your arms open. Go to it like, hello, my darling, what's the matter? What's up? What can I do? How can I help you? I'm here for you. What you think is not true, you're not that. And you just be with it for however long it takes, however many times it takes it, and eventually it goes away. So that, my friends, is where I'm going to stop, I think. I think I covered all of them. So, yeah, I'll speak to you soon.